Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this first live edition of The One Good Reason, finally making its way back to you up close and personal, right? This is Distant Minds number 3. We're going to have a very nice, informed panel. We're going to get into some of the sci-fi and sci-fact, and we're going to really kind of explore a few different ideas. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce everybody to go ahead and come on in, and then we'll jump right into our conversation. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey Mike,
it's going good.
Brian, great. So we do have a couple other guests that are going to show up. They're going to be kind of peppered in later on in the show, but we're going to go ahead and get it started. The first thing I wanted to do, if you guys are comfortable, that is, at any point, if you get uncomfortable, feel free to let me know. Oh, there he is, Josh. Thank you. Appreciate you coming in, man. Getting beamed up right this second. So the first thing actually we're going to do is I kind of wanted to go around the room, and if you guys again are comfortable getting into any type of instance where you might have thought that you saw a UFO, or maybe you feel like you saw a UFO, or if you know anyone personally who has confided in you, and let you know about some experience of theirs, and then kind of your reaction then, and then I kind of want to double back and speak on how your behavior might be now. Again, assuming that this didn't happen yesterday, right? So I'll go ahead and probably share last, but Brian, if you wouldn't mind starting us off.
Okay, yeah. So I did have an experience, and it wasn't too long ago. It was just I want to say it was the summer before last, so before lockdown summer. Me and my wife, we'd like to sit on the patio late at night and just kind of hang out there and watch the stars in the dark. And I see a light moving across the sky, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's moving weird. That doesn't look like a airplane, doesn't look like a helicopter. It looks kind of like a satellite, but it's super bright, because how satellites, they kind of drift. And have kind of arc to the way that they fly. And so I was thinking it was a satellite, but then there was another one right behind it. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. There's 2 satellites flying together right there. And then another one came, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And my wife could vouch for me. I was like I was ecstatic. I was like, oh, this is some craziness. Watching. And they all just kept going across the sky, a whole bunch of them. Like there's like 9 of them or something, just flying across the sky in a row. And I was so stoked, and I went and looked up, and this is the lesson I want to teach everybody. I went and looked up what was going on, what the lights were in the sky immediately, and it was the Starlink satellite being launched. That's what I had seen.
You got to see a satellite being launched. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, but I didn't know it was happening. And I saw it, and I was fumbling with my camera. I tried to take a video and a picture. Neither one of them turned out good at all. So, but I was able to find other people's pictures of it that were good. And that's another thing I want to say right there. Taking pictures of something like that in the moment can be pretty rough. But you always yeah. When you see something in the sky, the very first thing you should do is check the local weather station's website. That is where you're going to see it first, because there are little old ladies that's their whole job is to sit on their back porch and stare at the sky and call things into the weather station when they see something weird in the sky. So yeah, that's my recommendation, and that's my experience. And I did get excited and think it was a UFO for a few minutes before I identified it. It was a UFO to me because unidentified flying object. But I investigated it and found out what it was. So there's a lesson I want to pass out tonight.
That's really key right there. In the interim of your ignorance, if you will, definitely was an unidentified flying object. And if you had not pursued the research or looked into it, you could take that story and there it would stay, right? And you would continue to have this.
And I gotta double down on not just trying to find it immediately and looking at the weather station, but take note of the time and day that you saw it, because it might not be immediate that people start reporting something, but especially if there was like a a plane crash or something, you might not hear about it till the next day, but you saw something strange going down in the sky that didn't look right, or maybe some wreckage fell down and looked strange coming down in the sky, but the plane crashed 80 miles away. You might not hear about it until then. So you see things like that. And I don't know if you all are familiar with the Black Knight satellite, the images from space. So they captured all these still photos of this weird looking black amorphous object that looks kind of like alien technology to an extent. But it was kind of like in the cryptozoology and UFO forums for a long time there. And then these other pictures started to pop up with astronauts astronauts around it and stuff. And it turns out it was a blanket cover that got broke loose when they were working on the space station. So you gotta be skeptical. Healthy skepticism is what I recommend.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add to that really quick before we get on to Bryce. After looking that up, I mean, even if let's say I didn't even look it up, you could think, is this a satellite crashing into a plane, or is this, a satellite crashing down to Earth, or something larger? Is it the space station? Or your mind just
crashing into a plane? That would be an incredibly unusual occurrence. That the timing of that would be amazing.
Just like super. Yeah. I mean, you without actually taking the time and stepping away from the conclusion that you're maybe eager to jump to, right? It's probably easy to do that. But yeah, Bryce, I wanted you to go ahead and jump in. You had a particular story, I think, that you would
yeah,
share, if I'm not
so
mistaken.
my story is it's a bit different. This happened when I was much younger. I was about 14 years old, so I was living in New York, a suburb of Queens, but still, a big city by most people's standards. So it would be unusual to see a UFO in that sort of location, because most of the things around, typically, I think when we think UFOs, we think rural area, secluded, only a couple people around. Nobody's going to believe you if you saw it, that sort of thing. Not big city, aliens usually don't show up in big cities for some reason, unless they're like wiping out the whole city. But no, this was outside of my house. It was evening, but not dark. I would say more like dusk, because the street lights were on, but you could still, visibility was still good. I was walking with a friend of mine from school. We weren't walking from school, but it was a school friend. And I looked up and I happened to notice what appeared to be a circular light just kind of hovering far out in the distance. And it had lights around it. They were white. They were all white, but it had, I don't recall if it was 4 or 6 lights, but it was an even number of lights evenly spaced around the center light. And they were all cylindrical. And the 4 or 6 other lights that were surrounding the main light were rotating around the main light, and so, but there was no physical body or structure there. It was only the lights that I was seeing. Like, I didn't see a metallic form. It didn't appear to be an aircraft or a helicopter or anything like that. From the distance it was away from us and the light conditions, if you had seen something like it today, you would assume it's probably a drone, with a light on it, and maybe the lights we're seeing are the strobe lights or the beacons for the props or whatever. But this was in 1993, so there were no drones then. So we didn't have any clue as to what that could be. And then its movement was also appeared to be much jerkier than, first of all, it was hovering, and then it moved, and then it stopped and hovered again, and then it disappeared. And so we have no idea what it was. I never found out what it was. We're talking, 25 years ago, 26 years ago, something like that. So never really found out what it was. And I don't know that I mentioned it to anyone. We both looked at each other when we saw it. We both tried to figure out what it was at the time, but I don't think we talked much about it after the fact, other than to, tell the kids at school we saw a UFO and they all made fun of us and laughed. And then that was it, So I have no idea what it was. But my mind has speculated about what it could have been. And by the way, this was right around the time that I think I saw the movie Fire in the Sky. So of course I was always looking for UFOs and trying to see if I could see anything. And then lo and behold, we saw that. That was my first and only UFO encounter. I don't know if I was about to say unfortunately, but maybe it's fortunate that was the only one.
So
and that's also we're gonna get into. But yeah, Brian, go ahead.
This is what I do on the perspective. So I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no, feel free.
And if you don't watch the perspective on Tuesdays. So your UFO sighting, 1993, you said.
93, 94 time. I'm judging based on where I lived at the time and about how old I was. So
yeah,
it's a good year for Power Rangers. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm just thinking about, because you're right. There was no drones that people had at that time. There was there was remote control airplanes, but they looked very much like an airplane. They didn't look
and they didn't fly like that, and they made noise too. That was the other thing. It was there was no noise associated with
that is peculiar. I'm just wondering because how long ago that was. And I wonder, just that thing I saw a couple of years ago, how that would look in my memory if I hadn't looked up and found good pictures of it, and now can refresh my memory of what the pictures look like, how it would appear in my mind, if they would have been, doing different things, if I would have seen maybe inferred some different lighting and stuff. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but yeah.
Just having the access to the internet. I mean, Brian, you were able to get from point A to point B very quickly. I mean, being on Isolation Island here in the 90s, he's maybe it was some kind of a launch.
There were things I saw in the 90s that I believed in and stuff. Yeah, that I couldn't explain because it was the 90s. Definitely, I hear that.
I think you
hear that slogan. It's the 90s.
Yeah.
But Bryce, I wanted to ask you real quick before we move on to Josh. Were you scared? Were you more, amazed? What was the general feeling between speaking for yourself? I don't know how your friend felt, but
yeah, I don't know how he felt either. This was so long ago, but I do remember. I don't recall being scared. I do recall being extremely curious and kind of excited that I would get to see more. I was expecting more to happen for some reason. I don't know if I was expecting them
to get beamed up.
Yeah, I didn't know what I expected, or maybe to hear about it, like maybe on the news afterwards, or that some other people would be reporting seeing it, because this was, like I said, I lived in Queens at the time. So I'm thinking, well, other people are if the two of us saw it, then everyone else is going to see it too. But and then on hindsight, on reflection, it was only there for probably a couple of, maybe, 20 seconds at the most. So, but still, I was a little bit disappointed that something more didn't happen. But I think it was more excitement at the idea of it, because, I grew up a huge science fiction fan, expecting there to be aliens. And like I said, I think I had just seen the movie Fire in the Sky, which was about an alien abduction around that time. I'm assuming it came out at that time.
Yeah, it had really good special effects in it too, like really well done abduction scene.
So I was like,
for the time,
not that I should be excited about that type of thing, but no, I was thinking, this could be something. And so I remember being excited and kind of, just anticipating something to come from it, and then nothing. So than disappointment.
Aliens were big around that time. There was like Men in Black movies, and
Well, that was after that came after. So
yeah,
this
but
was
like in the mid to late 90s, there was there was the gray alien kind of theme. Unsolved Mysteries had alien encounter or abduction story like on every other episode, and I don't know if you grew up watching that, but I sure did.
I remember it. I don't think I watched it regularly, but
Josh, I see you there on mute, just FYI, in case you were going to jump in. I don't know if you had any. If you don't, it's no biggie. But
do
you
I
have any
had
story
two.
that you'd like to?
Yeah, I have two, but it's not. It's literally. It's not what it turns out to be in the end, obviously. But before I go into that, I just wanted to tackle what Bryce might have saw, because during those times in the 90s, there were drones that were being created, in a sense, and Israel created one of the first drones that were literally meant to hover in the 80s. So what we can actually think and what we can take away from that is that this is probably a prototype of one of those type of drones that were there just sort of like hovering, and that's why you didn't see that much happening with it and everything like that. Because if you really look at the circumstance of what was going on during the time and just military, I believe, and I forget if this is actually a quote, but some of the weirdest things are seen on around Area 51. But the situation is that the reason why there's weird things that are seen around Area 51 is because this is a place where they test out new military grade jets and any
technology.
Exactly. So from that point, we can kind of deduce that most of the things that people could say about, Area 51 is just literally the technology that the government is running and trying to keep ahead of other governments, such as Russia and China and everything like that. So we just don't know. But as you stated, I don't think that it's definitely a UFO, unidentified flying object, but it's not UFO meaning aliens in general, some sort of alien species in a sense.
And just really quick, if I could interject, just for the audience, Bryce and myself were actually both Air Force veterans. We have all the secrets. No, I'm kidding.
I was going to jump in as soon as you started talking about Area 51. I'm like, let me tell you about Area 51.
But please go ahead, Josh. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
No worries. So my first story was actually downtown in Montreal when I was younger, when I first moved here. And we were eating at a Chinese restaurant. And when we came out, there was this light going around one of the tallest buildings in Montreal. And it was just going in circles around the thing and stopping and hovering for a bit, then dropping, then moving all over the place, sort of erratically. And obviously, when you're young, your mind speculates, well, I'm seeing something. And the thing is that everybody was staring at this object. It wasn't just me and my father. It was everybody looking up into the sky, seeing this thing stopping, moving, hovering, stopping, moving. There's actually video of it. And even on the news, they put a video of it, in a sense. But what it turned out to be, obviously, later on, was a person playing a hoax with a couple of drones. So they attached a couple of drones to each other and then moved it around in a way that made it seem like there was something really there, like an actual unidentified flying object. But in the end, it turned out being an identified object, which is a drone put together into one massive drone. So that was one of my experiences. That was exciting in the beginning, but then after, obviously, it was a big letdown in the end.
So wait, just really quick. In seeing that and experiencing that, as you said, you were generally excited. You were amazed and kind of, it turned out to be people kind of playing on the innocence of others and kind of the ignorance of drones and things. Yes. Okay. And the second one, also an exciting.
Actually, it was more of a foolish thing because I was tired in a sense. So we were driving to Nova Scotia, and that drive down to Nova Scotia in the dark is kind of ominous just to begin with. There's few lights that sort of illuminate the highway. So while we're driving, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I just woke up. We're moving and moving and moving. And then I look on the right and I'm seeing this huge disc-like thing up on a mountain with these lights protruding from it. So obviously my mind in my fatigue state is like, holy shit, I'm seeing an actual UFO right there. Nobody's looking at this. Why is nobody looking at this? So I'm nudging my dad again. I'm like, Dad, go, look at that, look at that. And obviously while driving, he doesn't want to be like, what do you see? So he's still driving. He's like, don't worry about it. It's something natural. But I'm like, it's right there. It's literally right there. It ended up being a satellite, and not a satellite, but I mean like an electric power grid. But the way that it was actually not formulated, but the way that it was structured made it seem like it was something hovering above, but it was just literally the way that the lights were shown and my fatigue at the same time and the dark.
Optical illusion, ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like all three things put together creates one hell of a ride. That's for damn sure.
So I wanted to ask, just in contrasting your two stories, I think that's really good to look at, because in the first story, you as you said, you were kind of excited. This story, you seemed a little bit, if I can say, a little bit anxious.
Because this thing was huge.
Concern.
Like, I'm sorry, but this thing was absolutely huge. If this was an actual actually, let's just call it an alien ship. If this was an alien ship of some sort, that's actually terrifying, in my opinion, if it's that big, because this thing literally took up the entire mountain. So if you see this huge thing above a mountain and this is an actual ship itself, I mean, why would you come to Earth on something so big? Unless it wasn't for maybe certain hostilities or something. So that one I was a little more nervous about, but it could be fatigue and all the rest of that kind of amalgamated into this.
So funny how we think about that. Would it really matter the size of, if an alien ship had come here with like vastly advanced technology, would the size of their ship really make a difference in determining how big of a threat they were?
It's weird.
The size matter, yeah.
But the real topic at hand.
I had to, but if I could just add in just really quick, my experience, I guess, was I ultimately was hanging out with some friends. We were at like a park. We were, throwing a ball, like football or something like that. And, people kind of started to taper off, and it was just me and like one other friend. So we're tossing it back and forth. And it got dark. I was like, I probably have to go home soon. Looked up, about broke my neck, like trying to follow this thing, fell on my ass. Got like a little teary-eyed. I don't know if from falling on my ass or just from my fucking mind blowing, but saw this light basically shoot across the sky, and my mind went in a million directions. And I told my friend, and he was kind of like, I don't know why you're getting all worked up about this. I mean, it could have just been a shooting star, but
wait, and you fell before you saw the light, or you saw
I see the light and I start moving my head back to follow it, and I fell on my ass.
Because I was gonna say, if you had fallen and then saw the light, you could have just been seeing stars in your head from falling.
Yeah, so I'm all teary-eyed, I'm hyperventilating, and he's just very like chill. He's like, no, I didn't see it, but I mean, if I did, it's probably a shooting star. And just him saying just that reassurance of sometimes this shit happens, was just kind of like monumental. So I was like, I am kind of, jumping to the conclusion. I don't know what it is. Why am I assuming extraterrestrials? Why am I assuming, and then adding additional like motive and intent and all these different things? And I said, I just need to take my time. So that was very uncharacteristic of me to jump to a conclusion that quickly and get that worked up over something.
How old were you at the time?
Probably like 16, 17.
Had you seen a shooting star before?
No. So
had you seen one since?
2015, yeah. Or shooting star,
Yeah,
meteor.
It did. You see, so it's but not everybody has that resilience, let's say, or that person to give them that reassurance, or that kind of put you back on track, to follow logic, to use Occam's razor, to and if you don't have that second experience like I saw in 2015, I could still be thinking that this was all these layers of things that I built up in my head up to that point. But yeah, so that was my experience. I mean, again, I really don't know what it was, but I feel more comfortable bringing it down to earth, no pun intended, with the shooting star. And that being the case, I kind of went around the room with all of our stories. I wanted to jump into the topic of humanism versus extraterrestrials. And we want to touch on this kind of maybe a little bit briefly, but I think it's a good conversation to have. For me personally, I've kind of gone through kind of a spectrum of behaviors. Earlier, maybe when I was maybe in my 20s, it was kill, fight, blade in the mouth, low crawling, trying to, survive against these wicked aliens that are coming to destroy humanity. As I got older, obviously I'm taking on humanism, and I'm trying to actually, have practical uses of this in my life. And I look at it like, well, if I was introduced to some visitor from another planet who was of mild intelligence, maybe more so than myself, or less even, why would I jump to violence, or why would I jump to, and the answer was, just ignorance of what their intentions were, if any. And I had to kind of have that talk with myself, and is there any aspect of racism baked in the idea of humanism once you introduce an outsider, an extraterrestrial? And not so much of a pigment thing or a melanin situation, but more of the species itself. If you want to call it speciesism, I've heard that, consciousism, or however you'd like to say, just not from Earth, so therefore not for us, And I had to kind of come to grips with that. Like, I think I would have to admit that, in that thinking, there was some tribalism for no, apparent reason, just an arbitrary negative assignment to these hypothetical individuals. Nowadays, I would think that if I were to come across, an extraterrestrial, or whatever it may be, some fucking squirrel from another planet, even whatever it is, maybe something as ridiculous as that, right? That I would have to try to change a little bit of maybe even the way that I'm approaching it in even in humanism, because if it can communicate and I say, hey, I'm all about humanism, this is what we do on Earth, I'm ostracizing that extraterrestrial in that conversation, right? So I'm looking at it as a more of a, yes, I'm ignorant to the harm that could be done against me, but every moment leading up to the supposed harm that hasn't happened is a opportunity for communication, and an opportunity for education and learning. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I want to bring Scott in. I know he's in the background, but kind of just hold that thought. Let me see if I. Oh, there he is.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Beamed on up, Scotty.
That's right. There we go.
But yeah, we were just what we kind of did just really quick, Scott. I don't know if you were watching or if you just got here, but we kind of went around the room. We shared some of our personal either misconceptions or experiences left understood about any UFO sightings, etc. And then kind of right now we're speaking on humanism versus extraterrestrials and any adaptation that would need to take place. Would you want to share any personal story that you might have, or maybe if you know somebody personally who's shared a story with yourself about any UFO sighting? If you don't have one,
yeah, I mean, I personally, unfortunately, I've never had the experience of seeing a UFO or anything like that, or I don't think I've met anyone who claimed well, I take that back. I do know someone who I recently met who said that they were pretty confident they saw something they couldn't understand that was not anything like anything else that they've encountered before. So, but personally, I haven't. Now, I've loved UFOs and aliens and sci-fi. I grew up on it. And so I already know, like, I have this bias towards believing, or could have this bias towards believing. So I've always kind of, like, after I kind of discovered, epistemology and philosophy and logic, I've always had to kind of check myself. And really, those are the things I challenge the most, are those things that I believe the most. Those are the things that deserve to be really rigorously examined, because I want to believe true things rather than, imaginary things. I mean, it's fun, it's cool. But as far as the UFO stuff, I've been really intrigued by the news that has been coming out. I think it's, I've always told theists, like, I'm not religious anymore. And part of one of my talking points is I appeal to expert consensus on things, like when it comes to like ideas about the Bible or what have you. I always appeal to the consensus on that, which may go against, a lot of the religious viewpoints and stuff like that. Well, if I'm consistent with that, then I should also apply that same standard to this topic or any other topic, right? And so far, what I've seen is a lot of consensus, as far as I know, coming out to support that there's something weird going on. Not necessarily that they're aliens or they're time travelers, that they were in the Matrix or one story or another, but there is something really weird going on. Like, I would say in the category of extraordinary, based on what I've read and the videos I saw. So it's really kind of exciting to me. I think it's really cool. And yeah, that's my take on that particular part of it.
So that's good. I'm assuming it's good. You're taking a position of excitement, of wonder, of optimism in that camp. It's couched in positive thinking. So in as far as the humanism versus extraterrestrials, if an alien, I don't know, maybe if it even looked like me, right, and it rings your bell and you open the door, and it says, hey, and it shows you something that would demonstrate to you sufficiently that it's not from Earth. I don't know what that would be. Maybe it turns itself inside out, and or whatever. Do you think that your reaction or your approach to this, we'll call it individual, would remain positive, or would you have any type of fear or any type of negative reaction?
I think that's a really good question, because we bring, like, our philosophical baggage to the table in a situation like that, I would think. But then again, you never know how you're going to react until that time comes, and I've learned that about a great deal of things, right? So I don't really know for 100% how I would react. I may just get scared or something like that, but I would hope, at least intellectually, that I would be reflecting, the true person that I am, and try to be positive and try to stick to my principles. I mean, this is a being, so this is no different than you or anybody else. If it's a conscious being, or whether it's an animal, or whether it's, whatever it is, I'm going to try to treat it with respect as a being, as a living conscious being. I'm going to try to respect that, whether it respects me or not, or whether it takes that sort of philosophical grounding. I have no idea. I hope it does. But that's the baggage that I bring along, is the fact that I would want to respect all life, to the best of my ability. That's just where I'm coming from. Humanism, like we're talking about.
And that's a good point. Is, if I use an example, for example, Bryce, if I were to use an example like a great white shark, right, and you're scuba diving or something like this, and you're underwater, I pay the compliment of assuming that you have some knowledge of what a great white shark is and what they can do and things like that. that humanistic approach, right, of treating the animal with kindness and things of that nature, right? It's a little bit grayed at that point, where you're more focused on survival and safety and your own defense and the defense of your loved ones who might be there with you. In that ignorance of the capabilities of this distant mind, we'll call it, or an individual, it's kind of like, someone might argue that you're approaching a great white shark with just sheer ignorance to what its capabilities are. Do you think it's gullible of yourself to approach this individual with optimism, or what are your thoughts on that as far as?
Are you asking me?
Oh, yes.
So with respect, trying to take that analogy to the aliens, like you're asking basically if I didn't know what a great white shark was capable of, would I approach it thinking that it's a friendly dolphin or something like that versus, right. I think that human beings in general, I think that most animals are capable of some sort of higher reasoning, cognitive thinking, are afraid of what they don't understand. I think that's kind of, it's instinctive, and because really we evolved that trait, right? Something that you don't know what it's capable of can kill you, and until you have evidence that it's not going to kill you, then it would be prudent to step back and learn about it before approaching it. So that's kind of just our natural instincts. I think I would certainly be optimistic in the case of aliens actually coming to Earth. I would assume that the element of fear would probably still be there because it's an unknown. But at the same time, I think I would have there would be a strong instinct of hope, and the rational, logical, reasoning side of my brain would temper that fear by letting me know, look, these are aliens. They have the technology to come from however many light years away. Certainly they would be much more advanced than us. If they're that far advanced than us technologically, they probably are much more advanced than us socially as well. I mean, they didn't, we barely got to this stage without destroying ourselves, so they have to be eons beyond us. And if they're eons beyond us, why would they come to another planet? And for me, the only reason to come to another planet would be for them to teach us. Maybe they're obviously intelligent. They obviously have some interest in the planet, but what could they be interested in? They wouldn't be interested in our resources because our resources are plentiful throughout, it's hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, the same shit that's everywhere else in uniform. Yeah. So in the universe, so they don't need to come here for that. If they're interested in food, they would be technologically advanced enough to manufacture their own. So all of these horror movies and sci-fi movies we see where aliens are coming here to destroy us, the only reason they would have to destroy us is if they perceived us to be a threat, which obviously we are not, because we're not even on their level. So it must be because they recognize some potential in us in terms of being a thinking, intelligent being, but clearly not advanced enough yet. Clearly we need some sort of help. We're still killing each other. We're still at war, all this other stuff. So maybe they're coming to teach us. Maybe they're coming to give us stuff to guide us maybe along. And so I would be optimistic in that sense and think it doesn't make sense for them to travel all the way here just to kill us. That doesn't mean they're not a threat, though. They could be, who knows what kind of diseases or pathogens they could be bringing that could be deadly to us that maybe they don't know.
Stephen Hawkins, I think a few years ago, talked about this, and he said that he doesn't think that it's very wise for us to be seeking for intelligent life, because while he's convinced that they're out there, he said his biggest nightmare is that we actually do make contact. And he said the reason that he feels that way is based on our history of how we treat indigenous cultures throughout the world. Like he says, you can just look at recent, relatively recent history in North America, what happened to the Indians or in different countries, and see how we treated them. And he says, so it's not very it doesn't take a big stretch of the imagination to think that someone much more powerful than us wouldn't also treat us like we treated the indigenous people.
Alien colonizers.
Right. But I kind of lean towards what Bryce is saying here, though. I mean, that's kind of like baked into that assumption, I think, is this idea that they're going to be like us. They're going to be not very evolved socially and morally. I think that if they're able to travel light years and do that kind of thing, then obviously they've got something going on that we don't. So I don't think we we should just assume that they're going to be ignorant as us.
So you guys are leaning towards potential partnership versus potential exploitation and
I don't know if I would say.
That's hopeful.
Well, I don't know if I would define it as a partnership so much, because
Yeah.
to me a partnership is kind of an even, equal, like give and take. You're in this together, and I feel like they would be so far superior to us technologically, socially.
They wouldn't want to be.
Yeah, it would be like,
why would they want to fuck with us?
Right? So no, they would be more like, we need to show them
Yeah.
clearly
Sensei and Daniel's
son.
son. Yeah. But Brian, I wanted you to.
Yeah, there's a joke that's why they haven't made contact with us, because we're still so barbaric or what have you. But we're just using the tools that we've evolved. So our sense perception could be wrong, but it's helped us survive, helped us get here. Every member of your lineage, going all the way back to Luca, which is the last universal common ancestor on Earth, is a survivor because it responded that way to threats. So it's not a bad thing that you have this response, and that response is also the key to racism, especially when you grow up in isolation from other races and you get exposed to them later, especially if you've not been exposed directly to them but heard negative stereotypes about them. You're going to go in with a negative implication on this different looking person, and it goes back on a scale. So you're going to start with recognizing the other people are people, and that took us way too long as a species for us to say that these are other people too. And then you move out, and then you see to where we get to. You can go back to the early Greek explorers, and they recognized when they discovered apes that this was something that was related to us. So then you move back to apes, that we can recognize that these might be a people, and they called them people. Things like orangutan means old man of the forest. So we recognize those as people.
That's
and you
right.
move further out to monkeys, and that's one of the reasons why monkeys were such a popular attraction at menageries, even in medieval times, is because they were like little people. They put them in little costumes, and people enjoyed seeing that. And we can relate to that. We can look in their eyes and see a touch of ourselves in there. And it moves out. Then you move to all mammals, where you see fur and similar eyes and ears. You want to even say reproductive organs and mammaries and stuff that we recognize as a warm-blooded animal. This is something familiar to us. And then you move out to tetrapods, creatures with four legs. Okay, and we relate to those. They still retain a lot of the features that we have. So like lizards and crocodiles, turtles, birds. We can see some familiarity there. Get to snakes, where the legs disappear, people start to have some misgivings. We're moving. We've already left Uncanny Valley back with the primates, but we're moving into alien territory. And from snakes, you move into you move out of vertebrates and into arthropods and gastropods. And we were really we even described them as alien because they're so different than us. You think things with up to 12 legs and no skeletons and outer skeletons and multiple eyes, and it starts to get really uncomfortable for a human to see that. So an alien is not going to be, like you and me. It's not going to look like something that we're familiar with. So our natural response, and you can't control it. You don't have a choice. Your brain, because you're the long line of that survivorship who says that thing's different than me, get away from it. that helped people survive, but it also isolated people for thousands of years into little groups, which we call races, because of the gene pools, keeping people isolated. We're moved past. Well, I shouldn't say we moved past that. We're moving past that now. I think we're making great steps to that. People communicating all over the world like this is making a huge difference on that. But you bring something in, like an alien, something that looks completely different than us, we're going to have a hard time overcoming that long history of evolution that says stay away from that thing.
That instinctual, that instinctual kind of crude, shallow even defense.
There may be an alternative theory to that as well, though, because Brian just said that they would look very different from us, and that conventional wisdom would say that. But if they're also very intelligent and very technologically advanced, they may look identical to us. They may engineer it so that they intentionally look identical to us, knowing what our fear reaction would be, whether it's through holographic technology or some sort of shape shifting. Like they would know that we would respond with fear to something that looked very different from us.
Even engineer like avatars to engage with people. Yeah, and I think that I wouldn't be put that past humans to do something like that too as we move out into the other galaxies.
We've already thought of it.
Oh yeah, like if humans could decide what shade of melanin they would like, do you think people would opt for such a thing? No, but I wanted to say, Brian, I really liked the angle that you came from, because you were kind of highlighting just our flaws, our inherent flaws.
Evolution is a flawed process. It left us with a lot of baggage.
No, exactly, and just the inside of that, I mean, I think is just really helpful, probably for a lot of people watching. Would you say, if you don't mind sharing, that is, that you would be of the positive tendency towards interaction with an extraterrestrial, or do you think you'd be more on the defensive, maybe more?
I would probably be on the more positive side than most people, because I handle things all the time that are alien, that in some things with venom and stuff. So I kind of know how to approach an animal. I wouldn't be the biologist from Prometheus. I don't know if y'all have seen that, but he goes into the spaceship and goes. This thing stands up like a cobra and flares its thing out, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to pet it. It's doing analogous behavior to a venomous creature on Earth," and that's not a biologist. He's a fraud. I wouldn't do that, but I would get excited, and I think I would approach it and try to understand it. But I've always been that way.
And Josh, I know you've been waiting patiently. We're trying to go around the carousel here. Any gems you'd like to drop as far as your reaction towards an actual encounter with an extraterrestrial? Would you be negative, positive, shielded, open?
I think I would be more, sadly to say, on the negative aspect. I have to say, because the one thing that I see in general is that, first off, there's no reason for something that lives in a particular area in the universe itself, or within at least the galactic cluster, or if we even go into just the galaxy itself, to move for some unknown reason towards Earth. There's not there. So either one thing, and this is the one thing that does seem reasonable, is that even though that hydrogen and everything like that is abundant in the universe, we might be the closest thing to them in a sense. So if there's something that is close, will you go to something that is far away, or would you go to the thing that's closer to you? Well, you obviously go towards the thing that's closer to you. The next perspective that I would say is that the only reason why you would leave your home system to go anywhere else is predominantly because your own home system is in jeopardy. You used up all its resources.
I got pushback.
You used up all its water materials. Something towards that extent propels that particular species into space and towards another area that has the same exact resources that it can use. Now, if we're saying this, that also brings in another question. If there's also another species living using up the resources of this planet as well, well, is it better to live within harmony when our own resources are slowly draining? Or if you know a better way of how to actually renew those resources, would you expel, expunge, or minimize the individuals that are more barbarian to you to a certain area, and then reuse that energy and reuse the water and everything like that, and use your technology in order to revamp the earth in whichever way necessary in order for them to have those type of resources?
We already
If I can
did that.
interject.
Oh,
Well, let me just add this real quick, and then I want Brian too, because I know he's going to explode. Josh, taking what you said, I am following everything that you're saying. I'm just, the way that my mind is devil's advocate would be something that popped up for me would be, would you therefore be a proponent for something like Trump's wall, for example?
Oh, not at all. But what I would be a proponent for would be caution. What I would have a proponent for is not blind faith into something's innocence. You must be. So that's the one thing, is that if something is coming from so far away to come to Earth, no wall is going to stop it. No anything is going to stop it. However, the one thing that humans do need to do is be cautious of it. You can't just blindly go into something and say, hey, come, it's perfectly fine. And then all of a sudden you realize that its tendencies aren't at all what you thought it was in the first place. And that's why we call certain things Trojan horses, in a sense. Because people lower their guard down, they get all excited over something, they think they won some sort of glorious, success. Oh, we got contact with aliens. Boom, wonderful success. When you don't necessarily know that the things that are coming from this other place have daggers hidden behind their back, just waiting and preparing to do something that is absolutely horrendous towards the species itself, or humanity as a species itself. So that's why.
I was going to say really quick. I would agree that we would be ignorant to their past or previous actions and things of that nature. I did a talk a few years ago on like friends, enemies, and acquaintances, and how you go through the process of kind of exposing yourself to a stranger, and then just kind of putting yourself out there and running the risk of violence and danger and or missing out on an amazing person. And it's kind of a Band-Aid pull of not to ruin that talk. If you guys are interested, it's up there on YouTube on the channel. I do see where you're coming from, though. Obviously, are you hanging out with a potential murderer? Do you have a murderer sitting next to you and things like that? I totally, feel that. I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, how 10 being, Fort Knox, right, of how guarded you should be. And I guess, I don't know, 1 being the ultimate orgy. I don't know. Where would you be on this scale?
I would be closer towards a 7. I would be a 7 because my number one thing is based on some sort of understanding with these particular beings, let's just say. But at the same time, I'm not somebody who's just going to lower my guard down and be like, oh my God, beings from another place, come to me, and then all of a sudden you realize that, holy crap, these things are like aliens from Alien that are just going to devour the entire human race with those face huggers, or Predator, for instance, or so on and so forth. So I'm not saying that all aliens have that potential. All I'm just saying is that what one has to do is really think about, and that's why I really like how Brian stated what he stated, is that yes, maybe you might, or how to deal with things that are toxic and so on and so forth, but you don't just like, come to me, toxic snake. Right. Like your number one thing is to try to grasp at what is the safest way for me to engage this particular animal or particular being. in a sense. It's the same exact thing when you run into a tiger. There's certain people where you look at them, and tigers and humans sometimes seem to interact with each other very well if you're interacting with them from a young age. And you see videos such as that, as like a tiger full grown runs and gives this dude a hug, in a sense. Like, it's not trying to kill him, it's not trying to eat him, it's just there playing with him, in a sense. And then you kind of see, if you're not with this thing for so long or whatever, you see the opposite effect, where it'll take you down and it'll tear you apart if you're not careful.
And that's their natural state. It's unnatural for them to be cuddling with people like that. You have to basically, when you take an animal into captivity, human captivity, you stunt its development when you do that from a very young age. So yeah, naturally you should be apprehensive about tigers. If you're not, then
didn't Siegfried and Roy get mauled by one of their own tigers?
right,
Exactly.
Trained
Exactly.
tigers.
Yeah, but that's what I mean, though, right? Is that you need to be cautious. So the one thing is that, are we talking about extraterrestrials such as ET, where that thing would be awesome? I would actually like to interact with something such as that. Or are we talking about something like Mass Effect, where it's like the Vorcha, for instance, sharp teeth, very violent, very vicious, and literally the only thing that it does is attack individuals in general. So you got to know what you're dealing with before you even open up your arms and say, I want some brotherly affection with you, you know? Like, no, you can't do that. I know that it's a sad thing to say, but it's true. Until you know what you're dealing with, you got to keep your guard up.
Well, that's the theme of District 9 too, is that and they did that specifically to make the prawn not look. They kind of made a big mistake by giving them the human looking eyes. I think, my opinion, that it would have helped punctuate that natural response better if they'd kept them with arthropod eyes and made them intelligent, have emotions towards each other that we just couldn't understand because we're mammals and we respond to facial cues and body language that would be totally alien to them, and they wouldn't understand it and we wouldn't understand them. I like that aspect of it.
I think they did that well in Ender's Game, though.
Yes.
They portrayed the
Ender's
aliens
Game.
as...
Mhm.
Did you read it? You read the book, right?
I have the book. I read the book years ago, but then I think the movie was very different from the book.
Yeah.
They
read the book if you haven't, because the aliens, you get to know them more as a
right. But in the movie, even the way they looked alien. I mean, they looked more like your praying mantis there than they looked like us. So it made sense, their reaction.
That's a good segue, actually, Brian. So going off of what Bryce just said, literally just 2 seconds ago, given all of your experience with, let's say, insects, for example, if you had to speculate on what type of insect would best survive outside of a climate such as Earth, an environment such as Earth, what's going to be your winning horse there?
Okay. So a couple of things. All arthropods, all animal life on Earth depends on oxygen. So going into a place without oxygen is going to be a problem for pretty much any species. Now, there are beetles that they bore into trees. Okay, big, huge trees. They bore into them and they spend sometimes decades inside of them. There's been people that had their ancestors' piano that was passed down through the ages, and all of a sudden this beetle crawls out of the leg of it. That's been lacquered for since the 1940s, and all of a sudden it's got a beetle crawling out of it the egg was laid on that tree when it was a tree. So beetles can survive in larval states for decades in an enclosed environment, just from the oxygen stored inside the wood. So a beetle larva would probably be out of arthropods. What my horse would be. Most insects would die. Most insects are super fragile and really specialized to their ecological niche. There are species that are more cosmopolitan, and they tend to be like have a uniform body type. House flies, mosquitoes, cockroaches, pest species that do well, that are basically evolved a symbiotic relationship with humans. Those are the ones that do well. Would they do well in space? They do well on spaceships. They do well.
I see.
Staying with humans as we spread through the galaxy. We've spread them all over the planet, along with other animals that would be successful. Would be rodents, specifically brown rats, house mice. They would do well. I don't think anything much bigger than that. We're really bad about spreading cats everywhere, and we probably would do that too. And we would wipe out, entire ecologies on little planets and stuff like you do. But yeah.
So the idea basically is kind of dead in the water without the oxygen. The insects that we know anyway on Earth would be. Do you think
life?
For carbon-based life, yeah, it would be okay.
There's an interesting concept of biology though, and this may apply to aliens. So we may be able to get alien arthropods in a sense, because in ecology, things a genus will start off with more legs and work its way down to lesser specialized legs, but there's this ecological process called carcinization, where hard-bodied organisms tend towards a crab-like body structure, and that's what really punctuates this among the arthropods is that a lot of crabs aren't related to each other closely, or are closer related to other groups of arthropods than each other. But as evolution moves and more generalizes them to environments, they take on this very crab-like structure where you got the two front grabbing hands and then 3 to 6 walking legs.
It's convergent evolution, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep, it's called carcinization. So we would, it would not surprise me at all to see space crabs that we could call crabs and
space crabs.
Like crabs. Yeah, that would be what I'd expect to find as far as aliens go, based on what our understanding of ecology is on Earth.
So, like something like
crabs, I think something else, but that's probably not where you're going.
Something you get on a space trip, right?
Yeah, bring back space crabs.
One of these commercial flights. No, but so something like the ice on Mars, right? If we were able to get up there, drill, and go to this, let's say there was an ocean under the ice. Do you think something like one of these crabs could possibly exist? And
I think that if there's anything still alive on Mars, it's probably microscopic, maybe something along the lines like analogous with a tardigrade, water bear, and that's another
sea monkeys or something.
Extremophiles.
Extremophiles, exactly.
Something that occurred to me based on, I think something was said earlier, but I think one of the things that would concern me more so than just the way they look or something like this would be a kind of category that the alien fell into. Like, for example, if we went to a world like, say, Mars or, obviously another planet, and we should be really guarded about the aliens we encounter there, more so than if the aliens that come here. And the reason I say that is just basic inference. Like, we have our basic inference. Like, we can kind of think about things and come up with ideas about what to be scared of, what not to be scared of. Reason I'm thinking it's probably less of a concern for aliens that come here would be that, for one thing, if they're interacting with us, that's a form of communication, right? Like, even my dog, when I come home, my dog is, there's some kind of connection we have through our consciousness. Like, my dog is happy when I'm home. If he wants food, he does something, he wants to play with me when I come, there's some sort of behavior, and we're communicating. There's some sort of
you recognize that there's mammalian traits, and
there's some kind of basic connection there. And if a thing wanted to destroy you, it wouldn't even bother communicating with you. It would just destroy you. And then if you think about an alien that's able to come from light years away somehow, maybe through a dimensional travel or something like that, and is able to outmaneuver our radar and outmaneuver our highest, tech, things of that nature. I mean, it's checkmate pretty much, right? So why would it be wasting years and years and years of showing up and doing things if it could just wipe us out like that, if that was its intention? Maybe what it's trying to do is basically look at our potential. It's not really interested in where we are today. It's interested in what we can do in the future. We have this thing that we can connect with, this consciousness thing. This is what we're logical, we're intelligent, we're evolved. Maybe it's looking at our potential, and that's what it wants from us. That's why it's here. It wants to form some kind of, maybe not a partnership now, but maybe a partnership in the future. That's the thought that I had.
And with that in mind, Brian, I want to leave the audience with this really, if I can say, dazzling video that you shared with us just prior to me coming on here live. We want to go ahead and pull that up. If you had any specific point in the video that you'd want to share,
I really got it.
If anyone hasn't seen this, it's just amazing.
I'm only gonna play the just a little portion of it where they show the actual footage, because the video is actually them reviewing their own footage.
Right.
Just a second here. I'll go full screen on it. So
I gotta say, my jaw dropped when I saw this. Don't really have a thorough response. I really don't. And I was hoping to have one quickly, but.
All right, I'm sharing it. If you or Wes want to pull that up, and there we go. All right, so this is what we're looking at.
Oh, I saw this video.
Dude.
It's not my drone. Okay, watch. Here's where it gets scary. Watch it.
Try not to play too much of them talking, so I don't want to get a.
Look at the way I showed this to Alyssa. She's like, "Oh, you faked it. Like, what did I fake?"
Yeah, you could get to like where they blew it up right there. Perfect.
Yeah.
And just pause.
So that's what's interesting to me is those. Oh, I'll try to pause it. Hold on.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah.
Right there.
So
yeah, that red up there. That's very interesting. Why I wanted to also focus on, where was it? Right here is this. It's also interesting that it's got the light seeming to come. It's not a spotlight. I'm almost 100% certain of that, because it's got a.
It's not a shooting star either.
Yeah. It's got the light going down.
Weather balloon.
Oh yeah, it was one of those night lights.
But, let's see, let me count these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8. Maybe 8 if that's another light there. But it doesn't seem to be the same color.
This is the Lego people kind of snapped in.
Yeah.
This is something I wanted to show everybody. I was just so blown away when you shared this with me. We can put a link to this maybe in the description.
Yeah, definitely.
Or in the live chat even. Definitely suggest you guys watch it. It's not a long video, right? It's like 10 minutes.
Yeah, they explain the circumstances and what led up to this particular image. I don't know. I don't find this necessarily. I find it intriguing. I don't know if it's compelling, because there's all things that it could be. The story that goes with it, and that's the problem with a lot of sightings that come with a story involved with it. You don't know that the actual image or video that you're looking at and the anecdotal story that you're hearing along with it necessarily they go together. People take, oh my God, look at this picture I found on my camera roll. Let's make up this crazy story about it and show it on, try to take this picture of my dog running through the woods and it looks like a werewolf. I'm going to post it on a forum and people go nuts about it and then make up a story about it. So you don't know. This could have been old boy was flying his drone out in the backyard and he's like, oh my gosh, take a picture of how high it is. And like, oh my gosh, it looks like a UFO. I don't know. But that's not the story they tell. They don't seem, if you look at the rest of their stuff, this isn't like something they're doing. So that is interesting. But again, it doesn't have to be something they're doing for them to say, hey, this picture looks like a UFO and go with it from there.
Last thoughts here, guys. I really appreciate everybody's kind of input. It seems like most of us, maybe Brian and myself even, are more on the positive optimism side. I think Bryce is in there as well. Josh, I know you're more, as you said, the 7 on that scale as far as defensiveness and caution. Scott, I think you were kind of more in Brian and mine's camp and Bryce's camp. Is that correct?
Yeah.
But I think we all need to take maybe a page from Josh's book as far as the caution, but then also have the insight of, at what point do you pull that plug or pull that Band-Aid, I should say, and have be open to the conversation. I really appreciate you guys coming on, man. Hopefully everybody loved this conversation. Do encourage you guys to check out that video. Brian's going to share it with us there in the chat. Be on the lookout for the next One Good Reason discussion. I have a few things coming up. The next video I'm going to do is going to be a premiere of a previous talk I had with Sean D. He has a super memory. He gets into how he trained his brain from scratch, how to memorize oodles of freaking digits of pi and other things, and he kind of gives you some mental exercises to do.
Somebody's got
really
a mod
awesome
video to share.
I think I pissed myself about twice during that interview just because I was so blown away. But the next actual live video I'm going to do is going to be, and there's going to be an interview with an ex-Muslim who's currently an atheist. He's been an atheist for about a year. I won't share his name just yet because I'm not sure if he has like a moniker or if he's going to go with his full name. But anyway, that's going to be great. That's going to be toward the end of July. But other than that, guys, I really appreciate you staying awake, staying weird, and stay tuned for the next episode. Guys.